Welcome back to What Would You Ask podcast. My next guest, one of those ladies that's going to battle in the tank, right? She is the co-creator of SoleMates. You guys remember SoleMates. And they've evolved since they've been in the tank. And we're going to talk to Becca all about that at the end and all the different product lines that they've done. I think these pros are going to just sit around, and although they had a great product in the heel protector, they've kind of kept it going, and I think they want to rule the world the way they're moving. But anyway, SoleMates is that heel protector. And by the way, I went to their website, and just to do a little background, Oprah calls it genius. Demi Lovato, I think she says Demi, Carrie Underwood, and then what's my friend, boys over at NBC? Natalie, right?
Yeah.
They all love them. I mean, they all use them. And I don't know, Becca, you're going to have to tell me later, but how do you get the shots of Carrie Underwood on stage? Like, there's a shot on your website where she's actually picking her foot up, and you can see that the protector is on her heel, which I found that amazing. And for all you people that are in the 5 boroughs, you can't walk on a sidewalk anywhere in New York City without catching a heel. And listen, I'm a guy and I don't wear pumps, but I catch, when I'm in a business suit and, I catch that heel on a grate or a, seam somewhere or a crack in the sidewalk. So you could just think what these things can do. And then we know about the grass and what they do when it doesn't, you don't sink in the grass. So we're going to hear all about how the product has evolved and what's going on with SoleMates, but I'm really excited to welcome Becca Brown to What Would You Ask podcast. Hi, Becca.
Hi, Nick. Thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. And I want to just take the audience through your journey to Shark Tank and the creation of SoleMates. Tell us how that started, and then what brought you into the tank, besides everybody and their brother probably telling you, you guys got to get on Shark Tank. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, that's true. So the idea for SoleMates came out of personal necessity. And for me, it started actually at my high school prom, which was the first time I was wearing high heels. I was dressed up with my friends. We were trying to take pictures on my parents' lawn, and my heels were sinking into the ground. And it was such a vivid and frustrating memory. And fast forward to going to weddings and graduations, I was constantly confronted with this problem of having my high heels sink into the grass. So it was actually during my time at Columbia Business School when I told my friend Monica about this idea. And we were taking a class called Entrepreneurial Finance. And the final for that class was to write a business plan. So I told Monica about this idea for a high heel protector. And she had this immediate flash of all the high heels that she had ever ruined in the same settings. And she said, yes, let's do this. So she ended up writing a business plan for that class. And it very quickly took on a life of its own. So that was truly the genesis for SoleMates as it is today.
Found a problem and solved it, right?
Yep.
That's awesome. Good for you. And then what took you to, so now you have a product, you've created it into a business. Because when you got to, would you consider yourself, you wouldn't consider yourself early for Shark Tank, would you? Or would you consider yourself early for Shark Tank?
No, I think so. Shark Tank's interesting because sometimes businesses and entrepreneurs go on when they're really at the prototype stage or very early on in the business's development. We went on after we had been in operation for several years. So I would say, we were in that phase.
Year 5 in, right? Something like that.
Yeah. And at that, it's interesting because at that point, so we started with the high heel protector, but we started expanding into other shoe and foot care products, different solutions from blister prevention to comfort, deodorizers. And when we went on Shark Tank, we had a bunch of other products, but we were only able to talk about the high heel protector.
That's right.
So it's interesting because that's a question we get from a lot of people. Oh, I didn't know you made other products because they had seen us on Shark Tank. But yes, so today we have a comprehensive offering of various shoe and foot care solutions.
Interesting. So you're told by everybody that becomes your customer or people you're talking to or friends and family, you got to get this thing on Shark Tank. When do you buy into that? Because it's an arduous, the process, you've been through it. This isn't easy. And I've actually talked to entrepreneurs that have referred the Shark Tank, people in season 3 and 4 and 5 that have referred others that are in their entrepreneurial world and community. And they've backed out of it just because of the process. it's like a
Yeah.
part-time job, right? I mean, you got the Bible to fill out. Some people call it the application, but it's, and then you have all the meetings with the producers and the. It's. I don't want to say it's arduous, but it kind of is, right?
It is. It is absolutely. And so how we ended up getting on, it's actually an interesting story. So as I mentioned, we both went to Columbia Business School, and Columbia held auditions for Columbia alumni. And that was actually in 2014, I believe. And we auditioned. We did very well. We were swiftly processed to the second round. And the second round was to create a like 8-minute video talking about us and our story and our product, and kind of trying to show the personality around the two of us. And we totally screwed that up. We overproduced it. We scripted it. We were like sitting down in our office with all this bad natural light flying in behind us. And it was just a terrible video. I'm not ashamed to admit it. It was a terrible video. It was great. The people that helped us make it were awesome, but it was just not what Shark Tank was looking for. They want to see who these people are all about. They want to see what their personality is and their passion. And we didn't illustrate that in the video. So we did not actually get on that year. And it was, I think, like a year later, we had been getting a bunch of emails from other producers at other shows that CNBC has and things like that. And Monica had this brilliant idea, like, why don't we reach out to the Shark Tank producers and basically ask for another shot? And so she did that. And I think within like 10 minutes, we got a response that said, yeah, send us an audition video.
That's cool. Wow, that's cool.
So yeah, it was cool. So then the second time we made the audition video, it was totally different. We literally had a really good friend of ours come into our office one day and shoot us with a video camera, telling our story, talking about our idea and why we created it. And it was so much more natural. And it really gave, I think, the producers a sense of who we are as people and as founders. And so that was 2016. And that time we did get to the next round, which is when you go through all the contracts and stuff. And then ultimately, yes, we went and went out to California and actually taped the show.
So you get out to Culver City and you and Monica are there. What are you thinking? I ask this a lot of the entrepreneurs, and it's a weird question, but you stand in front of those first set of doors, not the ones that you almost walk into and hit your face on, the second ones. But the first ones, are you thinking, this is an opportunity of a lifetime, let's go kick butt? Are you thinking, oh my God, I think I left something at the hotel, Monica, you got to do it yourself? Are you thinking all of the above? Tell me about your thoughts as you go in. I mean, effectively, you're going in to speak with 5 business icons, right? I mean, I know they put their same pants on the same way we do. I know that they brush their teeth. I hope they brush their teeth in the morning. I get it, but they're still who they are, right? And there's got to be some nerves with that. Tell us about the feeling as you're walking into the tank.
Yeah, it was exhilarating. I have always been an athlete, and it felt like I was about to play a game. It felt like that kind of, adrenaline, excitement. Actually was like, I had to jump up and down a couple times before those doors opened because I just had a lot of energy.
Yeah.
I think that's on camera. But I guess 2 thoughts on that. So we were very, very prepared. We actually did media training in advance of going out there. Every day in our office, we'd have our staff and our interns, pepper us with questions just because we wanted to be really, really prepared, and we wanted to present well, knowing that ultimately the producers have free will at editing it however they want to, but we wanted to tell our story. So that's number 1. But number 2, yeah, I mean, we were so excited to be there because we had been fans of the show for so long. We, look up to these business leaders in the Sharks. And I think to actually be there, it was one of those like surreal moments where it sort of felt like you're like floating through it because it was happening after years of preparation and thinking about this. There we were. And so I have really fond memories of it. When we actually got in the tank, that's when the real fun started.
Yeah.
And we can get into that. But
Yeah.
Those moments right before the door opened, yeah, that was, I thought it was really exciting.
So you guys go in, you do your pitch, which I mean, the confidence is there. There's no question about that. And I imagine that comes from the fact that you're reminding yourself, and I've said this to entrepreneurs a bunch, that you must have the confidence of, look, Mark Cuban doesn't know our business better than we do, right? Nor does Kevin or, Lori or Barbara or anybody. That's got to be a lot of confidence, right? Because you're telling your story, you're telling your numbers. obviously they can pick apart it and give you different angles and why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that and why is this number the way it is and that, and your valuation is always a problem with somebody. Um, but having that confidence must make you feel good. And what I saw in yours was you guys had pretty much confidence all the way through. It seemed like entrepreneurs, when they got to get that first pitch out, because it's muscle memory in the mind, and it's you got to remember these certain things and hit the first, you got to sit. And by the way, to make it tougher, they make you stand on the spot for a minute while they change the cameras and lights and all that stuff, which, by the way, I'm remembering this, and now I got to look at Mark Cuban and smile at him because I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing but stand here and be quiet, which is difficult. But you guys seemed confident throughout. Usually it's like a deep breath and the Q&A starts and you're like, all right, I got this. But you guys seem pretty confident. Is that fair assessment of what I watched?
Thank you. Yes, I think we were confident, and I think we were excited, and I hope that it was sort of balanced in that way, because we were excited to tell our story, and we were excited to get their feedback, and we knew we had basically our media training really prepared us to have, I think it was sort of like 5 key bullet points that we wanted to make sure we conveyed, and we knew that a lot of the content was going to be cut. And we were on the set for about an hour and a half, and it gets cut down to about 8 minutes or something like that. So our strategy was to make sure that for every question we answered, we then tried to weave it back to one of those 5 bullet points, hoping that over the 8 minutes of edited content, most of those bullet points would have come through. So I think that gave us confidence. It was, having that preparation and then being really excited about presenting our business to them.
Perfect. I want to ask, I would like to cover a few of the questions sent in from our viewers and listeners. David from Summit, New Jersey asks, were there key points of your presentation, I think you were just touching on this, that you felt were critical for the sharks to understand?
Yes. And I think that one of the areas that we weren't able to really touch on was the fact that we had other products, and that actually was asked of us. I forget. I forget which shark asked us, but we did explain that we have a whole other line of products, and they were actually on set, kind of behind some of our high heel props, but we were not legally allowed to kind of go into that, and so that couldn't be aired, I guess. But I think that we were probably where there was the most pushback was just around the valuation, and we did negotiate with Robert. And that's, as you pointed out before, that's kind of really the fireworks in the Shark Tank segments when you get into the valuation and the deals. But we were, I guess I just, there was nothing critical. I mean, there was nothing that made me really cringe. I was very interested to hear what each of them had to say, and they all have backgrounds in different parts of industries and business. So I think that one thing that was interesting, Lori was the first person to back out. And I thought, she might be one of the sharks that's interested, her QVC, and, she's obviously a woman, she wears high heels. And the fact that she backed out first, I think that was, I wouldn't say it was shocking, but I was just sort of like, oh, okay, all right, let's switch gears and let's focus on the sharks that are still in it. So it wasn't like overly critical. It was more just a little bit of a surprise. Like, okay, she's out now. Let's shift gears.
I found it to be shocking. I'll be honest with you, Becca. I thought, here's why, because it is a product that fills a need. There's no question about that. I have, 2 daughters. I have a wife. I have a sister. I've seen this before. I've seen people shrinking on a football field, like, at a certain, event, or king and queen of, the high school, all those different things you go to. Right. And it's also, I think it's kind of demonstrable too. You have to have, so I thought that's right up her alley, I would think. And I was a little bit shocked, but you don't know what's in her world. And as you go, I think over the seasons, you start to see that these guys have, you're season 8, but they have a portfolio now of so many businesses. It's like, which way do they want to lean? And I think they're all starting to get this portfolio of, Kevin's got the thing of love now, he calls it, whatever it is. I don't even know. It's like marriage things. And he says he likes when people get married, they're born or they die, which is kind of creepy. But it really did shock me that, that Lori was backing out. And we're going to talk about everybody going through. I just want to get a couple more questions from our viewers and listeners. Ashley from Scottsdale, Arizona wants to know, did you have a specific shark in mind to work out a deal with?
We really didn't. We had done our research on each of them. We had read their books, obviously had watched the show for many years. We knew other deals they had done. We thought there might be a couple that could make sense. I mean, Lori was one of those people. Kevin was one of those people because he's also in kind of the wedding industry and other businesses. But really, each one of them, I mean, I think we were just excited we wanted to get a deal. I mean, that was our main goal. And we knew that each one of them could bring different skill sets and kind of perspectives to the table. So, but yeah, I mean, it was great. And we ended up getting 2 offers and we
Yeah.
accepted Robert's.
Yeah. Whose idea was it to have them try on the shoes? Which, by the way, I thought was fantastic. It was such an icebreaker. And do you know if, I mean, I know look, they all have earpieces. That's public knowledge. I'm not asking you to comment on this, Becca, by the way. I know you have to give your kids away, I think, if something happens. But anyway, you know, I get that because you always hear somebody will go, so are you going to make an offer, you know, Lori? And it's like, hurry up because they're telling me you have to go, you know, they'll say something about what was your offer again? And because they want to tell the audience what the offer is. I understand all that. And so does our audience. But how does it work when, I mean, you ask for them to come up, you have the shoe sizes. They're not all guaranteed to come up, are they? Or,
No.
I mean, so you had Kevin putting on shoes. I think Robert was putting on, I mean, who's the only one? Mark didn't put them on, I think. Yeah.
You're right. Good memory. Mark was the only one who did it. And we thought that it was because his basketball team would give him too much heat for wearing high heels.
There's no doubt.
Yeah. But the idea actually came from one of our marketing colleagues who we were kind of brainstorming around the set and the set design. And we just thought, wouldn't it be such a great TV moment if we were planning to have high heels for Lori, of course, but we thought, wouldn't it be great to have all the sharks try out SoleMates? So we asked the producers to get the shoe sizes of each one of them. And it was very hard to find like size 16 high heels. But we did, thanks to Payless. And what we did for the audience, we had the amazing set designers at Shark Tank. They built a little grass plot, and we got high heels for each of the sharks. And one of the shoes had our high heel protector on it and one did not. So we invited each of them to come up and walk on this turf and experience the difference between sinking and not sinking. And as you recall, like they had a lot of fun wearing high heels. I think Kevin was like sort of prancing around the set.
Yeah, he had a little too much fun, actually.
He did have too much fun, but they experienced, and that was our point. And that was always one thing about SoleMates. And early on, we were trying to find engineers and manufacturers. You know, most of those people were men, and they had never experienced a problem firsthand. So we thought this is an opportunity to really have these sharks experience this frustration and see the value of our solution.
Yeah, that was really a cool moment. You guys really knew your numbers. You were already in retail. Was it like, it was thousands of stores, wasn't it? At that point, you were in
at that point,
Nordstrom's and that
BSW.
Yeah. And your numbers were growing and good with good margins too, 65% margins. You guys were confident in all those. So there's an expectation, right? It has to be that we're going to get some deal here. I know you never know, but then it gets down to decision time and you got, you know, who was in? Kevin made an offer to you guys. Robert made an offer to you guys. What was the clinching thing as far as Robert's deal? Because Kevin had $100,000 for 10% with a loan, or excuse me, with a loan of 400. That was his offer. And then Robert just had the straight. I think he offered 30%, 500K, and you guys got him down to 20. Is that fair? Is that what?
Yeah. And so we knew going into it what our kind of walk away valuation was going to be, and we knew they were going to negotiate. We went in with our offer, a valuation of $5 million, and we knew we'd likely have to negotiate, but we had kind of our walk away number.
Yeah.
And so when Robert made his offer, I think structurally it was just straight equity, which made more sense versus Kevin's offer, which was a little complicated. It was a debt and a royalty, and it was actually hard to follow. But with Robert's offer, it was straightforward. So we ultimately just negotiated on the valuation. And it was really a nice point when Monica addressed his question about why it was important for us to maintain 2/3 majority. It was because we're able to then continue to manage the company. We had other investors, angel investors, and if we had sold more equity to Robert, then we basically would be losing our ability to control the company. So
you had 40, 20, right? Was it?
Yeah. Yes.
Hmm.
So he appreciated that, and he was kind of, once he got that point across, he's just like, okay, let's do it. And that was it. It was just, okay, let's do the deal.
So our viewers and listeners, when they send in questions and inquiries about what they want to hear, it's always about the stuff that they're probably not supposed to hear. So we appreciate non-disclosures and what you can tell us and not. But tell us a little bit about, we all know they have teams. We understand what goes on behind the scenes with psychiatrists and golf carts and taking to different hotels, and we already know that stuff. And we're excited that we've learned it through all of you guys collectively. I'm not telling you that they said anything like that, Shark Tank people. I'm just saying that we found out. But anyway, tell us a little bit about the first time you hear from Robert or Robert's team, and what was that like? I mean, you walk out of there excited about the deal, and then it's a handshake deal, though. It's in the tank. It's got to be worked out. Many, 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 many. I think it's even more than ones that end up staying through fall apart. And by the way, it's not like the old days in season one when they were going, there were people walking the tank. This is their final shot to get the deal. These people need the money. It's not like that anymore. Many times deals don't go through because the entrepreneur doesn't want them to go through, right? The business has evolved. I don't want to give my 35% of my company anymore, right? So they try to work it. It's definitely a two-way street. And we hear this. That's why I'm not saying that, I wasn't there, but I hear this all the time. That's, back and forth. So tell us a little bit about how does that due diligence process work? When do they touching base with you the same day you walk out of the tank, or is it a few days later? Tell us your experience with that.
Yeah, I think we spoke with them. One of his team members pretty soon after, and then there was some follow up and a bunch of emails and kind of calls were set up, and we were pretty quick to get back various material requests and things like that. We were excited to kind of keep moving things forward. And it was, it was a great team. They're very nice people, different backgrounds, a nice, diverse, skill set. And it was overall a very positive experience, and it was still kind of surreal. And I think the strangest part about that time period, if I remember it, was you tape, and then several months later, maybe you air, and you don't
Yeah.
find out until you're 2 weeks before your air date.
Yeah.
So we taped, but nobody knew we taped, and we were not able to talk about it, of course. And so we're kind of going through this process with his team, and it was a process. We're sending materials and taking time, but we couldn't talk about it. So it was a very strange time because we were very excited about what had just happened. We were going through a process and not sure how it was going to work out, but we couldn't talk about it. And there
Right.
was no guarantee that we were even going to air.
Yeah.
So, it's funny, I've talked with other Shark Tank alums about this, and that's like the weirdest part of it when you're in that transition period. And it only lasts for a few months, but it was definitely a little bit strange.
Did you talk to Robert during that time, or is it pretty much lawyers to lawyers kind of thing?
We did not talk to Robert during that time. It was just his team, and his staff, really. And I think that's pretty common, just based on
It
what
is.
I've heard with other
It is.
with other Shark Tank alums.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I want to ask one more question from the audience. Alex I just lost my screen, boys. Where's Alex's question? Oh, there he is. Alex from Jupiter, Florida. He wanted to know if there's any behind the scenes anecdotal moments that took place, anything memorable that went on in the tank.
Yeah. The funniest, I think, was the editing. And I remember the week before we were due to air, they do that little teaser, stay tuned for next week's Shark Tank.
Right.
And in that teaser, they really took some liberties with the editing of like a preview of our segment. And one of the shots was, in our media training, we were kind of coached to be conscious of your face. When you're listening to somebody speak, you don't want to have this kind of resting bee face.
Yes.
Which, even though you're listening intently, sometimes it looks like you're like scowling. So we were very conscious of that in our facial expressions. And in that little preview teaser thing, they basically took a question from somebody else's pitch. And I think it was like Kevin saying, like, what are your revenues? And then they took my face, which was like doing this, like, and it was just like, not at all what happened or even related to our segment, but that's kind of what you put yourself out for.
Yeah.
Like, they're willing to, take whatever they
That's
and
so
get to
funny.
make it dramatic. And so
That is so funny. These guys
that was a
occasionally,
funny.
I'm talking to my guys on the screen. They have a way into my head that they can say stuff through there. And
Yeah,
sometimes they'll just say, "Hey, Grouchy, wake up." And that's my sign that I have one of those faces on. Because
yeah,
it
yeah,
happens, right? You're just listening intently. And
totally.
I'm not focused that we're on video every minute. So I'm not,
No.
it's just, but all of a sudden they'll play stuff back or they'll send me a WAV file once in a while, just an email. And they'll go, "Oh, we're just editing. Did you want this in or out?" And it's like, it looks like I'm sleeping. Like, it's
Yeah,
just, it's awful. But I know
I
what you're
know.
saying.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about the Shark Tank effect. You guys get an air date, obviously. As you mentioned, haven't told anybody, unless they've already done their paperwork to that select group. Um, and now you find out probably 2 or 3 weeks beforehand you're going to air, and congratulations, you're going to go forward. What is that evening like in two ways? One is, did you celebrate that success and have a viewing party? And the other side of it is, did you get your website blown up and inventory challenged? And tell us a little bit about both those things.
Yeah, actually, so when we got the air date, I was 2 weeks before, and those 2 weeks were, I think, two of the most stressful weeks because we had to migrate our website to a new server. We were not on Shopify at the time, and we were kind of already in the middle of a transition website platform. So it was a bit of a fire drill to make sure we got onto a hosting site server that could accommodate a spike in volume, which we did pretty much at the 11th hour, right before the airing. But it was very
Spotify?
stressful. And then, I'm sorry.
Did you go with Spotify?
No, well, ultimately we went to Shopify,
Oh,
but we
Shopify.
were on a different server for the night of the airing because we hadn't been able to transition to Shopify yet,
Yeah.
but it did get done. But we had also a bunch of other things, just making sure stores had inventory, making sure we had our customer service people lined up for, messages coming through Facebook and Twitter and email and phone and everything. So it was a very stressful time, and we still didn't know how they were going to portray us. So going back to the part of your question, the night of the airing, we did have a viewing party, and it was fun, but it was also a little stressful because we were watching the segment for the first time. So the editing that the producers had or the editors had done was really new to us. We had not known how they were going to portray us. And so we were with all of our friends and a bunch of our family members, and we're watching it in this, place in New York City, and it was exciting, but we were also kind of like holding our breath as we're watching because we knew the outcome, but we just didn't know how they were going to spin it. Were they going to make us look like jerks or, like idiots, whatever? They have free will. So in the end, we were really pleased with how it turned out, but it was very exciting, but it was a little stressful time.
I find it amazing, Becca, that they do. I mean, think of the job they have to do. You're in there for an hour and a half. Some people have been in there for 2 hours, very, very few, but some people. Mostly it's usually 45 minutes to an hour 10. So you are definitely in the group that went longer than most. I get most people say right around an hour. Some people say short of an hour. A lot of people are just short of an hour. But people that have gone past an hour and 10 are in a very select group. Um, but I think it's amazing that they take that time and condense it to 8 to 12 minutes, right? Depending on if you have a commercial in between and you do two halves and stuff, it can be a little bit longer. And then they edit it pretty darn well. And the thing is, their challenge is, I want to be true to the negotiation and the presentation and the feedback and the Q&A and all that. They want to create that in a sense that it's a viable, true recommend, recreation, and not recreation, but a example of what it was. And then the other side is make this interesting television. Because if it's just back and forth, I'll give you 30%, I'll 35, people are going to fall asleep. And so it's interesting how they've been able to do that. And then on top of it, after 110 entrepreneurs who have been on this show, because people like you have been so generous to us, um, everyone says, yeah, for the most part, I thought where the editing was great. There's a couple of people, I can think of two right off the top of my head. I will not mention them, so don't write me. But that have said, I didn't, it just a couple of facial expressions, like you mentioned, they're not exactly matched. Sometimes they were frowning, and some other people had some examples of things that happened that weren't exactly how it worked, and they weren't too pleased. But overall, they do a great job, don't you think?
I do. I think they do a great job. And now going on like, is it 12
12
seasons
season?
now? So
Yeah.
yeah, they know what they're doing, and they have a formula. They keep it interesting. It's actually really remarkable. After all these years, they're able to continue to bring on great. I mean, I'm not surprised they're great entrepreneurs because there's always great entrepreneurs. But their ability to have, diversity of different types of companies and different stages of companies and different outcomes. I mean, it's really impressive.
It really is. It really is. I have some video of them upcoming guys. They were doing an app for basketball to find a bat pickup game in New York City. You can get on an app and you can find, and I hadn't seen that one before.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah. And I was like thinking, well, and these are two guys, from Queens that just said, you know what, we're having trouble. They lived opposite sides of the city. And I think they were twins, but they lived, they're in their 20s and they live separately. And it was a cool idea. I thought you can find games that are starting up or in progress, and you can go wherever you want. I just thought it was neat. And I've just started watching it before I jumped on here. But anyway, let's talk a little bit more about, so how did the website handle the traffic from a consumer standpoint? What kind of feedback are you getting, Becca? Also, we hear from entrepreneurs that even though you had a deal, did you get investors still contacting you? Did you get wholesalers contact you? It's not just consumers, is it?
No, it's everything. And that's what's, I think, cool about it. So our website performed beautifully. It stayed up functioning. It got way more, hits than it had ever gotten before, but it worked, and orders were flowing, and it was great. And we had our developing team kind of on call just in case anything did go down. And then in terms of other inbound inquiries, yeah, we got a lot. I mean, we got different distributors from different countries. I mean, that was a cool part too, because the show does air all around the world. So we definitely got inquiries from various different distributors and retailers. A lot of our investors watched it, and friends watched it, of course. And I think it definitely opened doors just in terms of additional distribution opportunities, additional marketing opportunities. I think what was also neat was that a lot of people would DVR the show. So the effect really lasted certainly through the weekend. So when we aired, it used to be on a Friday night. Now it's, no longer Friday nights, but so we saw the effect all weekend and then even into the beginning of the following week. So it continued, which was exciting.
That's awesome. Before I ask you about what's going on at SoleMates today and how our viewers and listeners can reach out and jump on all the products that you have and bring them home to themselves and buy them for family and friends during the holidays, which we have coming up, I wanted to ask you about resourcefulness. In all of the literature that I get, the videos I get to review from the folks on our crack staff research team, 2 interns from a local college, you guys talk about that a lot. Like was really important to be, I don't know if there was a lesson from somewhere, but you guys mention it a lot, that, being resourceful. I'm not going to have the answers for everything. I just got to know where to find it, kind of thing. Tell us a little bit about why that's one of your key traits.
Yes. And I think you're remembering the point in the segment when Monica actually talked about that. And that was a key takeaway from our time working at Goldman Sachs, which is really you're expected to be resourceful. So, you may not have all the answers, but you're expected to know who to go to or where to go to get those answers. And that's really been a key philosophy that we've always really carried with us as we've built this company, because reminder, like we didn't come from consumer products or retail or manufacturing or even marketing. We worked in a bank and more of a finance background, but we had this idea. So we basically figured out how to get it done. And that was required being resourceful, required, finding who can help us design this, who can help us manufacture this, how can we fund this? How do we get into a store? All these questions that we didn't know how to do those things. And yet we knew we had to figure out how to. So I think that's so important for any entrepreneur. And it's really tested also when the environment is challenging, like the world we're living in these days. There's no guarantee with anything really, but when you're running a business, there's no guarantee. There's no smooth sailing. There are always things that come up, things you can't even think of. And as much as you try to plan and prepare, you still have to be resourceful and flexible and be willing to pivot, which we've all had to do this year, of course, all of us as individuals and business owners.
She says she's at a bank. She was at Goldman. I mean, come on, there's a little bit, it's not like a community bank. Anyway, let's talk about what's going on at SoleMates today. How has the product evolved since Shark Tank? I know I get all the ads still because I went out and checked out your website and did all that. So I get everything now. I got all the stuff I could buy for my wife for Christmas.
Good. Really our retargeting is working.
Yeah, it is working. So tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have a comprehensive line of shoe solutions now, and it's not just for women. We make products for men, for kids, really for the whole family.
Hmm.
And it ranges from blister prevention, insoles for comfort, weather protectors as we get into the bad weather months, and just things to make you look and feel better in your shoes. This year, of course, most weddings and graduations and large gatherings have not happened. And usually those are a big source of our sales for our high heel protectors. And because those haven't happened, that's certainly affected our business. But what's been cool is that we have been able to focus on some of our other products. And one of the best examples of this is our blister blocker, which is a natural anti-friction balm that you rub on your skin and it prevents chafing and irritation. Normally, we market it to using that on your feet or your hands, anywhere you might get irritation. This year in the springtime, in March and April, we started getting a lot of emails and questions from nurses and doctors and frontline healthcare workers about face chafing. They were experiencing face chafing from having to wear masks constantly. No one had ever had to deal with this problem. So they were asking us, can I use your blister blocker on my face? And the question is yes. The answer is yes. It's all natural, non-toxic, it's not greasy. So we actually then created a program so that we could donate the blister blocker to frontline healthcare workers. And we did so by mobilizing our customer base. And we launched a program. So it was buy one, give one. And through the generosity and really our customers stepping up, we were able to donate to dozens of hospitals around the country and make sure that these frontline healthcare workers who are already sacrificing so much could have some comfort and relief in not getting that face chafing.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
even though, we weren't making ventilators, I still feel like we had a role to play. And I feel very good about the fact that we could help and we continue to try to help.
That's awesome. I mean, that's just flat out good stuff. I also saw you had like face coverings, and then you had the um yeah, you're talking about the blister blocker, but there's some other antibacterial like
Yep.
spray and stuff that was on
Spray.
there.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's pretty
Exactly. The
cool.
shoe spray that you can use for bags and everything. So, yeah, so we really did try to kind of pivot and focus on some of the other products that are more relevant to today's environment. And we're all excited for hopefully next year when weddings and parties resume.
Yes, geez, and trips and stuff too. My
And
my kids are
trips.
saying,
Yeah.
Dad, why are we not going anywhere ever? I'm like, you know
Yeah.
why we're not going
Yeah.
anywhere? It's usually the younger ones, the 9 and 10-year old. But so folks, you have to check out their website, first of all. I'm at the SoleMates. Is that what I should be?
Yep.
Okay.
You're right.
The SoleMates.com, SoleMates.com, the SoleMates. And it's really well done. It's put together. You can go right through it, just scroll down, and it's very, I'm not one, if there's things coming from the side and all over, I get crazy and I want to just delete. But this one is like just move around and you handle it on yourself. And um it's a nice place to be. So I would head
Thank
out to that
you.
spot. Where else should we go? Anywhere else retail wise or
Retail wise, you
Amazon?
can find our products at CVS nationwide, at DSW,
I remember that.
David's Bridal, Von Maur department stores if you're in the Midwest, and then a bunch of different shoe repair shops and boutiques. You can always look on our website or email us for local retailer. And of course, we're on Amazon. SoleMates, so just look for SoleMates on Amazon. And if you want to reach out to us, we're at the SoleMates on social and through our website, of course.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Becca, for being here today. Really appreciate your time and taking us through the journey. Continued success with the business. Tell Monica we said hello, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's been so fun to talk with you, and thanks for all your support. Really appreciate it.
All right. We'll be back with more What Would You Ask podcast in a second.